Trouble getting cell phone reception? More cell phone antennas can help with that, but there is a hidden danger. Dr. Susan Perry can tell us more.
We've set in motion a movement to prevent the installation of powerful cell phone towers across the street or in proximity to small children in France. So in proximity to daycare centers, nursery schools, creches, because we now know that these electromagnetic waves that are emitted by these cell phone towers pose a long-term danger to children's health.
What kind of effects do these electromagnetic waves have on children?
The electromagnetic wave emissions, if they are regular and at a high enough level, will either cause the overproduction of proteins at the cellular level or cause the rupture of DNA strands. In the long term, people develop concentration difficulties. A Stanford study demonstrated that exposure leads to obesity in children, ADD in children, and eventually in cases where people are particularly vulnerable, perhaps for genetic reasons, and exposed over a long period of time to a fairly high rate, they're subject to blood cancers. We now know, not only through independent scientific studies, but also through telecom laboratory studies, that children absorb electromagnetic waves twice as fast as adults, and the penetration into their skulls is twice as deep. And so when you listen to a cell phone, there'll be a curve on an MRI of those waves going into your brain. For a child, it goes almost all the way over to the other side. And why is that? Because the ratio of liquid to mass is greater in a child. And their structure is different than that of an adult. So they are doubly vulnerable in comparison to adults. And so we believe that this is absolutely unacceptable. These are vulnerable populations, and by law, by international law, they deserve the highest standards of protection that this French state can provide for them.
Does this mean that, for example, wireless internet give the same wavelengths or?
Well, anything that emits electromagnetic waves will have an impact on your cells. It's a question of degree and of accumulation. So I don't have my electrosmog meter with me right here today, but if I did, I would note that we have Wi-Fi in this office. And if I turned on my cell phone and sent an email, you would see a charge go out. People keep their cell phones, in their breast pocket or in their suit coat pocket, and they keep them on. People sleep with them under their pillows. It is absolutely out of the question to keep that device within an arm's length of your head. It is a small microwave. Wi-Fi also, if you have your Wi-Fi plugged in next to your bed, next to your pillow, your brain is receiving all of that activity on a regular basis. There is nothing wrong with this technology, but like the automobile, it needs to be regulated. You have a seatbelt in your car. We have speed limits. You have stop signs. We have a road code that we all are tested on in order to get our license and that we're expected to obey. We have nothing for this technology, and we need it.
Are people agreeing with getting these removed, or are they just being moved away from areas where children are at?
For the moment, nothing is happening, but I predict that within a 2-year period, France will at least adapt its legislation to protect children. You'll also then buy a cell phone that will come with a warning, for example, and more people will be using devices that keep the cell phone at a distance from their body. They'll put their cell phones on airplane mode when they're eating, when they're sleeping, when they're driving in their cars. If you step with your cell phone into an elevator, you double, triple your wave exposure because it's bouncing off the metal inside of the elevator. You should never get into an elevator with your cell phone on. You should put it on airplane mode. So people are going to have to learn to use the technology with greater caution. And the government is going to have to set minimum threshold protection and distances from creches, daycare, and schools for those cell phone towers, because we don't need them to be at 10 meters from the brain of a 4-month-old child.
In what way can people help?
Well, first of all, they can sign our petition. Secondly, what people must do worldwide is they must write to their elected representatives and ask that their exposure to electromagnetic waves not go above 0.6 volts per meter. That is the level at which all scientists agree there is no danger at that level or below. Above that level, no one agrees. The telecom companies have wrested from the city of Paris an agreement to emit at 5 to 7 volts per meter. That is up from the 2 volts per meter at which the telecoms operated for 10 years. And this is to accommodate fourth-generation technology. We don't think fourth-generation technology is necessary for humans. It's going to be for machine-to-machine conversation. Humans only need second- or third-generation cell phone technology to send emails, watch a video on their phone. Consequently, we're putting in place high-powered technology that is dangerous to humans and that will be used by machines, not by humans. It makes no sense. And so I would ask people to demand that their elected representatives lower the threshold of exposure to 0.6 volts per meter.
Can you tell us a little bit of the petition you've been circulating?
Yes, this has been a very successful petition. We used the website platform change.org, which now has a website in France. We worked with them closely and we developed what I would call a campaign momentum. We asked 2 weeks before we knew a bill was going to be presented to the French Assemblée Nationale, the Congress. We organized a movie and a petition signature campaign to push French senators and deputies to become more aware of the dangers of electromagnetic wave pollution. And this petition has gathered almost 25,000 signatures. So right before the legislation was supposed to be presented on the 31st of January, we were the second most signed petition online in the history of France.
Did you start the petition or was it someone else?
No, I've been at the heart of this movement. They put this thing above my head, and I find it absolutely unacceptable as a citizen. And so I've been a driving force behind this, but I work with my neighbors, and I work closely with them. And the film that's on the website for the petition is a collection of different neighbors who are talking about their concerns about this exposure and the exposure of our children.
What prompted you to start this petition?
Well, about a year ago, I noticed a small sign in the street in front of my house announcing that cranes were going to be coming in. And I thought, cranes for what? So I went to City Hall and I inspected the file, the dossier, and discovered that 3 very large and powerful cell phone towers were going to be installed on the roof next to my house. And so I was immediately concerned. I then began to realize that although I am underneath the towers and hence not very exposed to the emissions, the daycare center, the creche, the play school, the music conservatory for children, the handicap housing across the street, the 1,000 vulnerable people in and out of that facility across the street would be far more exposed than I am.
How will this petition help?
The petition has already helped. The Socialist Party recognized that petition as a threat, and that was why they, rather than let the bill be discussed in the Assemblée, they tabled it quickly. With 25,000 signatures, they knew they had a problem. And so we're going to use that leverage to open discussions directly with the government, the French government. We're also, one of the next steps we're going to take, we've gone right to the European Union. I attended a hearing on the 8th of January, and I'm working with the European Environmental Agency and also with the Commissioner for the Environment to see whether it wouldn't be more pertinent to simply adopt European legislation that would in turn force the French to promulgate it. So it's a two-pronged attack. I'm working here in France, but I'm also working at a higher level in hopes that I can effect change more quickly.
When will we find out if the bill passes or not?
All right, so on the 31st of January, the Green Party of France presented a bill to the to the Assemblée Nationale. And the French Socialist Party did something quite exceptional. They asked that the bill be tabled and sent back to the Economic Committee, not the Health Committee, but the Economic Committee, to decide whether or not the bill posed a danger to jobs in France. No mention was made of health. The Minister for Health, the Minister of Environment were not present. They sent over the Minister for the Digital Economy. So this has become a jobs issue for the Socialist Party, when in fact it will cost the taxpayer a lot more than jobs in terms of healthcare costs further on down the road. And so the Socialist Party has just made a mistake by tabling this motion, because it's now being picked up by other parties who realize there's actually something rather sinister at work here, a tremendous lobbying effort on the part of the telecoms company to keep this issue under-regulated. They don't want it to be like the automobile. They don't want to accommodate the safety of the consumer. They want to make as much money as they can for as long as possible.
Where can people find more information on this?
They can go to our website at www.ruelobino.org. Rue Lobino is where they're putting up that cell phone tower. And there are about a dozen collectives in the city of Paris. People can also go to websites like Robin des Toits. And also we have students at AUP who've set up their own Facebook pages discussing this issue. So all you have to do is type in, if you're working in English, EMF pollution, and a lot of information will come up. And if you're in France, ondes électromagnétiques.
What is the next step to protect ourselves and our children?
The next step is to use your common sense. Technology is not a free ride. It comes with a cost. We need it. We should use it. You should think of a cell phone much like an automobile. You should use it with intelligence and with caution. It's a very practical device, but it can kill. And consequently, every woman, man, child using a cell phone, is about 97% of the French, for example, needs to think about how they want to use that technology. Small steps, putting your phone on airplane mode when you're not going to be using it, keeping the phone at arm's length when you're actually sending or receiving information, not sleeping with it under your pillow, keeping Wi-Fi out of reach of your children, keeping cell phone towers away from schools and daycare. All of this is simple common sense. We don't put a playground next to a superhighway, nor should we put an antenna across the street from a nursery school. It's just common sense. If people would use their common sense, we can live with this technology, and we can live with it for a long time.
Dr. Susan Perry is the director of the Department of International Affairs and Comparative Politics at the American University of Paris. She has worked with governments and organizations around the world to bring change and help people.
Nous avons besoin de vous. Aujourd'hui, les opérateurs téléphoniques ne se gênent plus pour installer leurs antennes relais auprès des crèches et des écoles.
L'installation s'est passée dans la nuit. Donc ils sont venus, comme on peut dire ça, des voleurs.
Aucune consultation, à tel point qu'au début, quand on a vu les plans de l'installation, on pensait qu'ils n'avaient pas vu qu'il y avait une crèche, qu'ils s'étaient trompés. Et en réalité, ils savaient très bien qu'il y avait une crèche et ça leur était complètement égal d'installer les antennes devant la crèche.
On a découvert il n'y a pas si longtemps qu'au 107 avenue Parmentier, un immeuble jouxtant l'école, il devait y avoir une antenne relais qui devait être apposée, une antenne relais de 23 mètres.
Aidez-nous. Protégeons nos enfants. Signez la pétition.